Well, one of those phrases that was tricky for us was need and want. There were not separate words for need and want. Now, you and I understand that need and want are radically different things. And my children get them mixed up all the time. They'll say, Daddy, I need whatever it might be. And I know what they actually mean is, Daddy, I want, whatever it is that they're saying. But in the Dagara language, embora meant I need or I want. And so I was talking to my best friend Pascal one day, and Pascal, we had lots of monkeys where we lived. And I'll tell you, there's nothing in the world more frightening than driving down. There was only one paved road in the whole country, ran from the capital to a city called Bobo Dioulasso, and there was no speed limit on it. And I would drive slow compared to much of the other drivers. I'd drive 85 or 90 miles an hour, and I would be getting passed all day long by these guys who were flying around me. And there's nothing in the world more terrifying than driving 85, 90 miles an hour down down a highway, and then a whole pack of monkeys just runs out in front of you, puts the fear of God in you quickly. And so I was fascinated by these monkeys, and I remember saying to Pascal one day, in my mind, what I thought I said was, Pascal, I think these monkeys are kind of cool. I'd kind of like to have a pet monkey. Well, what Pascal heard because of the limited vocabulary was, Pascal, I need a monkey now. And so 2 or 3 days later, here comes Pascal walking into our courtyard with a little monkey, holding this monkey by the hand. And he says, here you go. And I thought, well, what do I do with a pet monkey? So we figured it out, and I had the coolest pet I've ever owned in my life, had a little female pet monkey, and I named her George, because what do you name a monkey but George? I wasn't the man in the yellow hat, but we had a monkey named George. And so we had George, and we're trying to figure out what to do with her, and we thought, well, maybe we can get her vaccinated. I mean, this is the bush of West Africa. I don't know if that's possible, but I asked Pascal, can we get George vaccinated? And Pascal said, yes, we need to go to Djibugu. It's a village about an hour and a half away. There's a vet there, and he can vaccinate her. And so I said, all right, we should do that. And Pascal said, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., we'll get in the vehicle and we'll go. Now, you need to understand the vehicle that we drove. Our supervisor on the field was kind of opposed to us having four-wheel drive vehicles. I still don't understand the fascination with that. I mean, we lived in the bush of West Africa, but he didn't believe in giving us four-wheel drive vehicles, so he gave us a minivan. We drove a minivan in the bush of West Africa. We called it the Moose because it had a big moose sticker on the back. And so 9 o'clock the next morning, me and Pascal and George the monkey and Sean and Andy, two short-term missionaries, who one was there for 2 years, one was there for 6 months, that were college students, college-age guys, were living with us. We all piled in the van, and we took off for Djibugu and left Tracy behind at the house. Well, we got in the van, we started driving, and I'm driving, and I learned very quickly that George was highly offended to be riding in the van with us. And the way George showed her displeasure was that George pooped every time she hit the ground somewhere, all over the van. I mean, she bounced all over the place, very unhappy, and every time she hit the ground, she pooped. And I learned in that moment that there is nothing in the world that smells as awful as monkey poop. And it was all over the van. We're driving about an hour and a half down the road, and we get to Djibugu, and Pascal says, stay in the van, Micah. You wait here, I'll go get the vet, and he'll come see you, which I thought was remarkably good customer service. And so I've got George on a leash, and I'm letting George sort of run around. I'm not very happy with George at this moment, but I'm letting her run around a little bit on the leash, and the vet comes out, scoops up George upside down, rear end up, grabs the syringe, slaps it in her rear end, throws the syringe in the bushes, because that's how they dispose of needles in West Africa, and then gives her back to me and says, all right, and I think I paid him like $3 or $4 or something like that, and he said, you're free to go. And so we get back in the van, and we begin driving back toward our village, which was an hour and a half drive through the bush. And about halfway there, we had a flat tire, which was not unusual because we drove a minivan in the bush. And so we would have about one flat tire a month. So it wasn't a big deal. I pulled over to the side of the road and I began to go about the business of changing the tire. And I went to the back to get the equipment to change the tire. And I realized that when our van had been in the capital city the month before, there had been doing some work on our van, and either intentionally or accidentally, our tools to change the tire had been left at the mechanic's office there at his garage in the capital, which, remember, was a 5-hour drive. And it's not like I can pick up a phone. I didn't have a cell phone. We're in the middle of the bush. And we can't change the tire. And so we realized in that moment we're going to have to walk. 45-minute drive back to the village. We had to walk over a little mountain. It took us 4 to 5 hours. And so it's in the middle of the African heat, and we just started walking. Well, as offended as George was about riding in the van initially, she was much more offended that I was asking her to walk through the bush. And so, y'all, I kid you not, this is what happened. I'm not very happy with George, and so I've got the leash, and I'm sort of walking/dragging George along the road, and George would kind of lean back and would run for the edge of the road, and she would Superman jump, legs out in the air, Superman jump and grab the bush on the side of the road and hold on so that I couldn't make her go anywhere. Well, I'm not very interested in appeasing a stubborn monkey at this point, so I just start walking, and I'm dragging George. And so George has a hold of the bush, holding the leaves, and she just slowly strips all the leaves off the bush until she falls on her face, gets up and runs and grabs another bush. And we do this for a while, and I won't have anything to do with her. I just keep dragging her along. And finally, George realizes he's bigger than I am, and she just gives up, and she lays in the street. And I really am not happy at this point, so I just keep dragging her. I don't care. I'm just going to drag the doggone monkey all the way back to the village, you know. And Pascal, my friend, he feels sorry for the monkey, and so he scoops her up in her arms, and she's scowling at me, you know, pretty happy now because Pascal is carrying her all the way home. And we walk 4 or so hours over this little mountain through the bush, and we get about a half hour from our house in the village, and a guy passes us on a little moped, a little moto, and Pascal flags him down, and it's pretty normal there for somebody to jump on the back of a moto and ride in, and so Pascal asks if I can ride, and he says, sure. I've got a little motorcycle back at the house, and so I thought, well, I'll ride in, I'll get the motorcycle, I'll come back, and I'll ferry people back to the house. So that's what I did. I get on the back of the moto, I ride to the house, I get the motorcycle, I get it cranked, cut my leg open while I'm doing it, jump on the motorcycle, and I ride back, and I kid you guys not, right when I get in eyesight of the rest of our guys, the chain on the motorcycle snaps. And now I'm right back where I started, only now I have to drag a broken motorcycle and a stubborn monkey through the doggone bush. And so, as I was driving out there, Pascal actually passes me on the back of another moto holding the monkey, who I'm pretty confident what she said to me when she went by shouldn't be repeated in church, that little monkey. So that little rotten monkey and Pascal ride back to the village, and it's me and Andy and Sean. Sean catches a ride on another moto, so it's just me and Andy literally straddling this motorcycle going 2 miles an hour as we sort of half push it, half wheel it down. We get to the house. I pick up the phone, I call my boss. She lives in the village where we got the monkey vaccinated, an hour-and-a-half drive away. I explained to her what's happened. She's not very happy, but she says, I'll drive to your village, I'll get you, I'll take you to the vehicle, you use my equipment, change the tire, and we can go on our separate ways. And I said, that's fine. So we wait about an hour-and-a-half or 2 hours. She gets to our house, she picks us up. We all go sans monkey at this point, and we begin to drive back to the vehicle. And again, I kid you not, right as we get in eyesight of our van, I realized that I left the keys to the van back at the village. And I had locked it to make sure that nobody got into it while we were gone. And Lynn, our boss, she's very unhappy with me at this point. She says, I'm going to leave you here, take my equipment while I'm gone, you change the tire, I'll be back in a few minutes. Well, it's going to be at least an hour-and-a-half or 2 hours because she has to drive 45 minutes and then come back. So she leaves us there, she takes off. Y'all, about the time she gets out of eyesight, I go to lower the tire down, and as I do, I realize the spare tire is completely flat. She spends an hour-and-a-half going to get my keys. She comes back. I explain the situation to her. She takes us to her village, 45 minutes the opposite direction, with the real tire and the spare tire. We get both of them repaired, come back, change the tire. About 9 o'clock that night, we finally get back home. Worst day of my whole life. I was not laughing like you all are laughing right now. Now, I look at it now and I laugh a little bit, but at the time I was not laughing.